pissed that I fell for it. Ex-Trump supporters explain why they left the MAGA movement. I'm sure this should be good. CNN, ABC, and NBC are all refusing to air it. Pretty unprecedented. Damn. Okay. Maybe it will be spicy with all this lead up to it.
There are growing signs that President Trump's MAGA base is fracturing, with high-profile defections by former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and influencer Ashley St. Clair, and recent polling that indicates that the overall number of people who identify as Republican is shrinking. But for the diehard, leaving MAGA isn't easy.
That's actually an insane drop. 6 percentage points over 2 years. That's fucking insane. That's like a 20% reduction, basically, in how many people identify as Republicans. This is why I say you can't go off of who identifies as a Republican for like Trump support, because definitionally a Republican is somebody who supports Trump.
As Republican is shrinking. But for the diehard, leaving MAGA isn't easy. When you were a part of the MAGA movement, how deep were you?
I was as deep as anyone could have been. I was an aspiring MAGA pundit. I had bylines in places like Fox and The Federalist. I spoke at Trump groups. I was a donor on the campaign. I was unapologetically a MAGA and Trump supporter.
Rich Logis is the founder and CEO of Leaving MAGA, a nonprofit for those disillusioned by the movement. The group, which Logis says is funded entirely by small donors, provides support groups, de-radicalization resources, and a platform for members to share their experiences.
After I left in 2022, I realized that because MAGA is a community itself, to leave, I thought that I should build a community for people who also decide to leave. When I left MAGA, I had nowhere to go.
To get a better understanding of what makes people leave MAGA.
Literally a cult? Yeah, it is literally a cult. It's just like, I don't know, I hate you. It's like, it's not, the problem, okay, listen, let me be a little bit more explicit with my language here. There are a lot of people who were pro-Trump or are pro-Trump because they were raised into it in the same way that a lot of cult leaders raise people into it, or members of cults. That is to say, like, they were groomed into it. They were born into a family that groomed them into it. They were like subjected to overwhelming social pressure. This is a real thing, right? I understand that. I think that like I'm willing to offer like a kind of ethical carve out for these circumstances, in the same way that I wouldn't really morally impugn somebody for being a former member of a cult, like under those circumstances. But there's a really, really big difference between like 18-year-old who just left the cult and like 45-year-old who got into it at 37 because they really liked the explicit political message. That's also the thing, like cults traditionally kind of hide and layer the negative information about the cult. Like the outward message in the cult is like, well, we have a community, forgiveness, nature, communion with God, whatever. There's like an outer shell, and the inner shell with cults invariably is like pedophilia, right? It's always what it gets down to. The problem is that for MAGA, the pedophilia is on the outside. Everything bad about MAGA is on the outside. It's not like hiding it under an outer shell. I understand that MAGA is a cult, but there is a big, big, big difference between falling for a cult when you're young and when you're older. And also, unlike a regular cult, MAGA doesn't really hide how bad it is. You know what I mean? Like, MAGA pretty openly expresses itself. They're not really like hiding it. So I don't know. I kind of just like hate all Republicans, current and former. I don't know what you want. It depends on when. It depends on when. If a person voted for Trump in 2016 and since then has been like, fuck, that was retarded, like, I'm not gonna, but like, if you voted for Trump in 2024, post January 6th, post COVID, you voted for Trump in 2024, like, come on. Like, how limitless does my patience have to be? Like, Jesus Christ. Anyway.
We heard from an array of the group's members.
I grew up really poor, so a lot of my friends' parents would be responsible for helping me get to prom or making sure I had, new shoes for school, and they were all MAGA. And it was very much this constant conversation of, if you want to have nice things, be a Republican. Look at what we have, look what we're doing for you. They say Republicans are cruel and heartless, but look, I'm taking care of you. If I was cruel and heartless, would I do that?
I really wanted acceptance with my father, and my father was very much into Fox News, so that was something that we would connect on.
I became heavily indoctrinated into trad wife culture. Household voting was something myself and my fellow trad wives in the church, we were all absolutely fine with household voting. And that
Right, so just to clarify, for people who don't know, household voting means the woman does not vote.
So the SAVE Act,
He looks a little bit like Beetle Moses.
in essence, is to take that right away from women.
In 2015 and 16, I felt that the two parties were the same, that democracy had failed most Americans, and that elected officials cared mostly about the wealthy and the powerful. And even though Trump ran as a Republican, I was very enticed by his outsider status.
See, I like to me, this is just like a human disqualification. Like, if this is something you have ever fallen for as an adult, like if this is something you've genuinely believed, I just don't think, like, I just don't think, I think that if democracy can work, it will be in spite of people like you. It's not even a moral condemnation. It's just like your relationship with reality is too tenuous for me to think you should be enfranchised.
The timelines you've given me, you guys were all sort of on the MAGA train to some extent in 2020, right? At that point.
Yes.
When you heard Trump claim that the election had been stolen, were any of you like, yeah, they stole this election, Trump won?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Up until fairly recently, when I left MAGA, I did believe that the election was stolen.
It's the mark of a need of a permanent caretaker. It's the, I mean, it's Aristotle, right? The natural slaves argument. Was that Aristotle or Socrates? I don't fucking know. I'm not a Greek philosophy guy. The natural slaves argument that some people are just, oh, that was Plato. Oh, damn, it was the third guy who I forgot about. That's crazy. It was Diogenes. That's not true. Yeah, he was cooking with that one.
Believe that the riots were actually, those were patriots.
They stormed the Capitol, and I'm like, well, yeah, I guess this is what you got to do if you have a corrupt, election process happening.
Until I actually switched off Fox News and started getting my news from other places, my information, that's when it's...
God, come on. What other places? Come on, is it like something boring like OAN or Newsmax? Or are you talking about like Alex Jones? What are you talking about?
It finally hit.
Diversifying their news turned out to be a common factor in leaving
going
MAGA.
away from Fox to the
I
left.
met my now husband in 2021. He is a black man, and he saw a Trump flag on my profile, and he was like, hey, could you read White Fragility? I'd really love it if you would. And I did.
Oh, fuck. This is so embarrassing. Holy shit. This is going to make people fucking mad. Not us, like other people.
And it was very interesting because I was terrified of that book up until that point.
Oh, fuck.
And I read it, and it wasn't even as scary as I thought it was going to be. And they made me watch a documentary on January 6th, and I didn't even know what happened on January 6th prior. This
is what chuds write like racial cuckold fantasies about. Like my beautiful ex-wife matched with a bowl on Hinge, and then he was like, yeah, read White Fragility, bitch. And then she's like, okay, you're right, I'm gonna get a spade tattoo or something. Like, this is the stuff of nightmares for them, you know. Now she's a lib.
To the PBS documentary, and I looked at him and I said, Scott, did that really happen? And he was like, where have you been?
It's so hard for people, because I said it's not that you're dumb, you were fooled. That's incredibly hard to admit.
Well,
we are in the United States of algorithms right now, and MAGA media is very efficacious, it's very effective, and it's very disciplined.
Stefan,
yeah, well, okay, so I agree with that. But I cannot accept the idea that the kinds of propaganda that you fall for aren't reflective of you. We can do this infinite recursive sociology thing where we're like, well, nobody's actually morally at fault for anything they believe because everyone was just led to that conclusion via the circumstances of their life. Like, no Nazi is morally like responsible for being a Nazi because they were subjected to conditions that you could do this for anything, right? Like, at the end of the day, we have to accept some degree of personal responsibility for the stuff we believe, assuming you're an adult. If you're like a 14-year-old groomed into a cult, you can make exceptions. But like, again, you're all adults here. So we don't have to like go down this infinite path. We can blame you. And I don't buy the idea that a functioning person, a person with like a baseline level of political and social literacy, could fall for this stuff, because MAGA propaganda is retarded. It's like the Nigerian prince scam. The reason those emails are so poorly worded, the reason there are so many typos, the reason it's so unbelievable is because they're trying to cut through selection bias. They don't want to waste their time on people smart enough to partially fall for a well-crafted scheme who will later wake up to it. They only want to talk to people stupid enough to fall for the obvious trap, because otherwise you'll figure it out later, you know? MAGA propaganda is like that. Like, it is for stupid people.
Became disillusioned when MAGA beliefs clashed with her understanding of medical science.
When I really began to wake up was during COVID, because as a trained respiratory therapist with 5 children, the mixed messaging was something like that finally broke through the cognitive dissonance, because I was hearing, wear masks. No, don't. They don't stop respiratory viruses, when I very much knew that they did.
Stefania would be forced to return to her work in respiratory therapy in 2022, when her husband contracted long COVID and could no longer work.
It all felt very karmic, like I was experiencing the aftermath of things I had voted for, you know, downplaying COVID only for it to then hit us.
It's not easy to believe something firmly and then come to the conclusion that you've been wrong for many years. Was that hard for you, just on a factual level, to say, oh, I believed things factually that I now realize were not true?
Yes, yeah. That was something that I just couldn't square, because I couldn't be wrong, because I consider myself intelligent, knowledgeable. There was no way that I was wrong about it, and I held that belief for a long time.
You know, I had believed that when Trump ran that he would be somebody who would be different as an outsider. I think that
this guy especially is stupid. You can also tell from his head shape. Sorry, no hate. A little bit of hate. Yeah, I don't know. Surefire sign of intelligence. I can never be wrong. Look, I get everyone has. I understand everyone's biased here. I guess, and it's the same stuff that I say about More Perfect Union. I really, really, really wish we could, you know, kind of like peer in through the veil a little bit, like read the open book that is their minds. What attracted you to the movement in the first place? Because the Trump movement has never once held any ground to people who are not in some way prejudiced. Like, the whole premise of Trump from day one has been he's uncucked by civility and will say it like it is, and the thing that it is white nationalism. Like, from day one, 2016, 2020, 2024, every election, the main talking points, the main line has been, so even if you were very politically uneducated and you thought Trump really was some kind of like maverick, and to be clear, Trump was a maverick in the Republican Party, not ideologically, but socially. Trump didn't represent anything new for the Republican Party, xenophobia, racism, tribalism, whatever, ideologically. Socially, he was out from left field. It's just that doesn't mean anything. Like, yeah, okay, so he's not part of the insider neocon group or whatever. That doesn't change anything. Not really. It just means that he's going to beef with them before they fold and do whatever he wants. But in terms of what he pitches, like, is the dream of having an outcast as the president really so valuable to you that you're okay with the bigotry? Like that's fine? I just wish they were more honest about why they supported him.
he was correct in pointing out a lot of the flaws of our political system. It just turned out, unfortunately,
like what?
That he didn't try to solve those or remedy those ills, that he exacerbated them.
Hearing you guys talk about MAGA and about supporting Trump, it sounds like you're talking often about like a cult that's damaging.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But he's the president of the United States, and it's not a cult. It's like the dominant political ideology of the United States in this moment.
You know, we all have a need for community. Our species yearns.
It's not that they like Trump, it's that they hate the Dems. I promise you, and I mean this, I hate the Dems more than all of these people put together, because real hatred is informed. You have to know something to hate something. I guarantee you, it's not an excuse.
For a communal existence. And what MAGA does provide is a place where people feel seen and heard and recognized, and some of their very valid fears and concerns are acknowledged and validated. We used to say, we're not in the cult, the outside world is the cult, and we're not the crazies, the outside world are the
That's what all cults say, of course.
crazies.
The group says that leaving MAGA often means losing relationships with loved ones, but it also teaches them to approach those loved ones with empathy.
When I left MAGA, like I said, I kicked the door open and jumped through. I had a heart full of hate. I hated everything about Trump, everything about MAGA, everybody that was in MAGA. Just hate, 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 hate.
That's fine. That's good. That's fine. Keep it up.
Because I was pissed that I fell for it. So I would just go on the offensive and attack anybody and everybody that still supported it. And I've learned over time that that's not going to change anybody. In fact, it's going to push people over. So
I disagree. I think that the evidence overwhelmingly disagrees with this. I think this is like a very common like lib-pilled centrist bullshit line, like the best way to reach out to Trump supporters or any reactionary movement is to like be nice to them or whatever. I think this is completely untrue. I think that by and large these people are parasites that take advantage of your sympathy. They should be scorned and mocked and socially outcast, and then they will stop. They will stop because they will realize that they are choosing lives of misery for themselves, and better they shut up and not engage ever again, even if it means biting their tongue, than making them feel like they have any justification for believing the things they believe.
I've learned to be that empathy, that voice of concern, that caring voice.
But that wouldn't work either. It literally does. It actually does. For essentially every shift in social acceptability of bigotry over time, the way you tamp down on bigotry is not by reaching out a hand and listening to the stories of people who are bigoted. You just silence them and you crush them socially, and you cut them off if they express themselves. You fire them, you just ruin their lives, and eventually they shut up. We already did this for racism. Back in the 1950s and early 1960s, it was extremely common for white people to just be openly racist, not in like a, oh, pull up your pants thug kind of way, but in like an extremely open, just hard R, like they're different than us way. And over the course of a couple of decades, that went from being fairly commonplace to being completely socially unacceptable to the point that you could ruin your life by expressing that sentiment. It worked, at least for a while. It works. You just have to socially crush it. It's not, I'm not trying to be like an edge. It literally works. Like that's like, imagine if in France after World War II, all of the Nazi sympathizers, the people who were like Vichy France, they were like on board with Nazi occupation of France. Imagine if after the Allies liberated France, all those people were like treated with kid gloves, Oh, I want to hear your story. Why were you okay with the Nazi armies invading France and occupying it and using its like installing a puppet government and using it to no, the Nazi sympathizers after the the liberation of France were treated like dog shit, which they should have been, They kind of were, though. In some places in government, the bureaucrats were treated deferentially. This happened in Germany as well. But by and large, socially, they were not treated well. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with social stigma. Like, it's good. It's socially necessary.
You can do this. I did it.
As part of leaving MAGA, there's really two outcomes that occur. The first is renouncing the lies.
This approach doesn't work. People should listen to what scientists say about handling cultists, but it's not a cult. It's not actually a cult. We say MAGA is a cult colloquially to describe how delusional they are, but cults, by and large, grow by lying to people and grooming them into it. The MAGA movement is not like, it doesn't operate that way. Everyone who's in the MAGA movement has not been personally inducted into it by some charismatic, dishonest cult leader. They fall for algorithmic schemes, admittedly, but the pole of the movement is open bigotry. The premise behind MAGA, the things MAGA supports, are not hidden. They're open. Oh, what? Trump is the cult leader? Oh, fuck. This might be like a level 2 discussion. And because a lot of people are watching right now, it's like a level 1. We have like a level 1 audience right now. Okay. Categorically, there is a difference between a 12-year-old with Republican parents who has spent their entire life being given a very specific worldview, who never really had another chance. That 12-year-old might not have had the ability to encounter different viewpoints. Maybe they grew up in like a tight religious community, or they grew up in like a rural area. They didn't know many people. They didn't have access to the internet or whatever. Like, it's very possible they had no choice. I'm not morally impugning these people. But the vast majority, and I mean the vast majority, of people who are in the MAGA movement were not groomed into it. The MAGA movement said, hey, we stand for racism. And these people were like, fuck yes. That's the thing. When they tell you that they were soothed, they were lured into the MAGA movement by the sweet song of like maverick opposition to the deep state, they're lying to you. They are lying. The Nazis did this too. After the fall of the Third Reich, a bunch of Nazis were like, oh, well, I was just like excited by the reinvigoration of the country. They were lying, because the real reason they were excited about Nazism was heavily tied in the fact that they believed a wide variety of things: the supremacy of the Aryan race, the idea that Jews undermined the Germans in World War I and caused like unfavorable signing terms for the Treaty of Versailles. They're making it sound like they were just victims, but they were adults who made a conscious choice to join a hate movement. You know? All hate movements have some degree of zealousness that you could call colloquially a cult, but that does not mean that they are like actual members of cults. They are hate movements. So yeah, you have to be like, social stigma is what works here. It has always been what works. Also, yeah, have you like encountered a Trump supporter? They're like entirely motivated by spite. Like, one of the things that you notice about members of cults, by and large, is that there's a kind of like recalcitrance. The members of actual cults may turn a blind eye to you. They might not listen to you, but they think they're the saved ones and you're not the saved ones. Like, even if they're being groomed into bad beliefs, they think like, well, I'm blessed because I'm on the inside and they're cursed because they're on the outside. Like, there's like, I'm part of the elevated group or whatever. But MAGA is and always has been motivated by open spite and hatred. They're the most contemptible people in the fucking world. They're awful. Have you talked to them? Have you argued with them? They're not like, oh, yes, I've seen the light of MAGA and I hope one day you'll join us too. They're fucking awful. They're terrible people. They're incredibly, I mean, for lack of a less juvenile term, mean-spirited. They're not like cult members. So I listen, I agree that in a colloquial sense, MAGA is a cult, but I reject this line as soon as it's being used to like morally exonerate them in any way, because I think that's their excuse, you know? Like they want that to be the narrative. Sort of like the KKK with a belief system, but it's more like a community of like-minded individuals. Look, people chose to join the KKK. You know why the KKK fell apart? Because of overwhelming social stigma.
Falsehoods and conspiracies of MAGA politics. And the second part of it is that someone who leaves MAGA decides to build up rather than tear down democracy by making the continued case that we agree more than we disagree. You know, we're doing a billboard campaign right now across the country, and the message on the billboard is very simple, welcoming, and inviting, and it says, having doubts, you are not alone. And we have more people than ever.
Chad Vosh is trying to describe how to meaningfully disincentivize bad behavior on a large scale. This isn't how to change your dad's mind. Well, the thing is, you guys also haven't changed your dad's mind. Like, I'm also saying this on a small scale. You would have more luck changing the minds of your MAGA parents by saying, fuck off, I'm going no contact, you're a piece of shit, than you would by trying to like argue with them every Thanksgiving and make them see the light. MAGA people, that movement, they're just bad people. They suck. They're bad on every level. They're morally and intellectually deficient. They're not like us. They're motivated by an entirely different set of priors. They don't want the same thing but disagree on the methods. They just want the world to be worse. Just in particular for the people they don't like. They love arguing. They love being the victim. The best thing you can do is just make them suffer through your absence until they change or die alone. This is overwhelmingly the case, by the way. It sounds like I'm trying to be like a you know, edgelord, but this is genuinely the case most of the time.
who are in MAGA coming to us, asking us for help leaving.
Do you guys think that this group that you are a part of plays a role in this political moment, in the midterm specifically? Do you think it might have a measurable effect on the way that things go moving forward?
Every time we as a nation have been in a crisis situation, the way that we've gotten through it, the way we've pushed forward and progressed is by forming unlikely but necessary alliances. And everybody who leaves MAGA, there's a chance to form an unlikely but necessary alliance with people who have left. We are all living proof that it is possible to change.
I just think stigma is what leads to that change. Generally. There are lots of people in both chats right now who are like, yup, I have MAGA family members and they are literally like wastes of time to talk to. I'm so over this. It's been a decade, man. It's been a decade. It's like 10 years of this, 10 years of having to hear like, just love and peace, kindness and patience, and they'll come over. Like, it hasn't worked. They're still fucking here. It's still happening. More people need to think like Daryl Davis. Are you referring to that black guy who tried to like reach out to members of the KKK? You know it didn't work, right? This is one of those like liberal myths. The idea that like the best way to de-radicalize racists is finding like a friendly black guy to go and talk to them or whatever, which, I mean, good luck finding a black guy willing to do that or whatever. But like there has been a ton of criticism of his methods and outcomes because like if it was that easy, you know, I'm not saying I dislike Daryl Davis. I really feel like he's often used as an excuse to justify bad social policy, you know? Can we see some of that criticism? Okay, if interactions with black people were enough to dissuade racists, how did the Confederacy happen? Like, appeals to empathy are great, but they need to be, it's a carrot and stick situation. Appeals to empathy can work, but they have to work in the context of like what you're doing is unacceptable, and not just you saying it. Like, you saying it's unacceptable is one thing. Like, it needs to be really socially reaffirmed. There is like still not been any like defeater to the big, I guess, like supporting piece of evidence to my argument, which is that racism over the course of a couple of decades went from being extremely widespread, commonplace, and socially acceptable to being extremely stigmatized. And this led to an enormous reduction in racist beliefs. Like, people now are much less racist than they were back in the 1950s. People in the 1980s were much less racist than they were back in the 1950s. There was a massive, massive shift, and it was not made through like individual coddling. It was made socially unacceptable to be racist. A reduction of racist beliefs or racists lying low. See, that's the great thing. When racists lie low, their ideology dies out. That's the point. A society in which racists have to shut the fuck up is one where racist beliefs aren't reaffirmed and then they become less common. That's the point. Like, there were less Nazism in Germany after the fall of the Third Reich, not because a bunch of people who supported the Third Reich magically changed their minds on it, but because it became completely unacceptable to express pro-Third Reich opinions. Therefore, children weren't indoctrinated. We've talked about this before. There was an intergenerational survey done in Germany back in the 1960s that found that a fuck ton of people who were in their 30s or 40s when Hitler was in power still supported Nazi beliefs. A lot of them, like nearly a majority. Even in the 1960s, 15 or more years after Hitler killed himself, there were still lots of older Germans saying, well, it would have worked if it wasn't for X, or like, he had good ideas, da-da-da. But when the results of this survey were made widely known, they were made public, and younger Germans saw this, and they were like, what the fuck? All of our fucking parents are still Nazis? The younger Germans didn't become Nazis. Why? Because the parents were shamed out of expressing it. The parents literally lived under Allied occupation, or Soviet occupation on the east side, but the study was done on the west side. And for that reason, you couldn't be an open pro-Nazi. Yes, I know, Operation Paperclip, but I'm talking about the general population here. And because of that, those ideas didn't really propagate. Nazism dropped not because everyone was convinced out of it, but because it was made socially unacceptable. You know, racism's not natural. People have to be taught it. The Ku Klux Klan, the Deep South, was systematically destroyed by federal prosecutors crushing them, not by some kumbaya bullshit. God willing, I wish we still did that. If only, if only. It was forced upon them, though. It wasn't a social change, it was law. It was both. It was law and also overwhelming social stigma. But if you're suggesting that we need to apply law to make being MAGA intolerable, I completely agree. Thank you. The Republican Party is a terrorist organization. How does the technique of introducing diversity, like big cities being melting pots, to make them less racist through exposure, mend social outcasting? Because you can't be racist when you live in a melting pot. Like, you can get away with being anti-black if you live in bumfuck nowhere, Oklahoma. You're not even around any black people. But you can't really be openly anti-black in the middle of New York City. At least there are significant social drawbacks to doing so, not just with black people, but with a lot of the non-black people there too, which means you have to shut up. And the human brain is like an engine. The more you express or feed a feeling, the more you're likely to feel it. The more you feel anger, the more likely you are to feel anger. But if you don't have the ability to accept, to have your racism accepted by the people around you, if you live in an environment where anti-racism is socially prioritized and privileged, you will slowly mold to that environment. Not because of some kumbaya bullshit, not because people are reaching out to you and asking heartfelt to tell them why you feel the need to be racist or whatever, but because you have to shut the fuck up. And over time, you can change. But it requires overwhelming social stigma. The evidence for this is extremely strong, by the way. This is not like conjecture. This is how it works. Generally speaking, people want to be liked by the people around them. It's the reason why there are a lot of edgy teenagers who turn into little Nazi fuckwits if you just put them in like Discord servers where they're groomed into being Nazis. But if you took them out of it and just like had them interact with people in the real world, like normal people day to day, they probably wouldn't be, because being a Nazi is actually pretty socially deleterious. So it's like actually a bit of a hamper to normal interactions with people, So we have to create environments where it's completely unacceptable.